This week on the latest episode of The Big Show, it's the 4th of July weekend. As you can see, both Charles and I came dressed the same way. We are ecstatic. There is plenty to talk about today. We will have the review of Beverly Hills Cop, Axel F, and Despicable Me 4, among a bunch of other things. We'll have all that and more on the latest episode. We're keeping it real with Film Gordon. Let's go.
Experience life through the eyes of a true film addict. Keeping it real with Film Gordon.
Welcome to the latest episode of The Big Show, keeping it real with Film Gordon. I am Tim Gordon, and as you can tell, both Charles and I not only dressed alike, but our excitement is at the same place. Charles, welcome to the show, brother.
Oh, say, can you see? Happy 4th of July! I got the cookout getting ready to go. I got the block party we're getting ready to have. I'm excited. It's time to celebrate.
All right, man. Well, hey, bro, all I can tell you is that I'm really looking forward to getting some time away this weekend, man. It is, it's funny when I say time away this weekend. I've had time away the last 2 weekends, being both in Beverly Hills a couple of weeks ago, as well as being in Chicago last week. So it's just been a lot of stuff that's been going on, man. But I'm glad to be back, man, even though we are technically not back, if that makes any sense.
I'm really happy. I'm real happy to welcome you back to my show. It's been a couple of weeks, and it's good to be with you.
Okay. I got nothing, man. I heard there was this hot new show down at DC Radio, man, and they told me it was my show with your name on it, but it's okay. I mean, you know, it's okay. So we are back, man, at DC Radio 96.3 HD4, keeping it real with Film Gordon. Charles Kirkland, thank you for the last 2 weeks, though, seriously, for holding it down, man, while I was out of here. And, you know, I'm glad that you're able to talk to somebody today, brother, instead of just talking to Shane. Well, actually, you were talking to somebody both weeks. The public just never saw who you were talking to.
Is for some reason Shane likes to interact with me when I do the show. So you know, I said, "Hey Shane, well, what do you think of this?" And Shane actually gave responses. So you know, I wasn't alone.
The Shamester. All righty. Well, so let me see, man. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. A lot of stuff going on, man. We are a month removed from our film festival. We are now in what I call, you know, normally people, Charles, is it August that they call the dog days of summer?
Yeah. It's always the dog days of summer. Right around the corner. But you know, it's been unusual this year. We've had the dog days of summer all summer long. We've been sweating and humid and just worn out. While you're chilling out in Chicago, we were sweating. It was hot.
Well, Chicago, man, I must admit, man, 2 of my favorite cities that I had the opportunity the last 2 weeks to spend time with. I've been going back and forth to LA, man, for over 40 years, man. And LA is always a marvel to me. It's not just the home of the film industry, but you know, I just love, like, it's so funny because we're going to talk about Beverly Hills Cop a little later on. I was in California when Beverly Hills Cop, the first one, came out back in 1984, and I remember the aura and the attitude and the atmosphere that you had. The Lakers at the time that were really kicking butt. The Dodgers had just come off of winning the World Series several years earlier. You know, you had all these songs. Van Halen would release "I Love LA." which tied into the LA Boston Celtic sort of rivalry that was going on. So LA in the 80s was hot. It really was. I mean, LA now is special, but LA in the 80s with Michael Jackson and yeah, LA was a special, special place, man.
You know, I love to correct you. It was Randy Newman that did I Love LA.
Who did I say did it?
Van Halen.
Oh, they did Jump. My bad. I was jumping too. So
it's the right
Newman.
year though, 1984. That's when it all came out. Yeah.
Yeah, man. So thank you, Charles, for that. The other part, man, talking about one of my new favorite food cities is Chicago, man. My God, I told you were standing there last night. I was talking to a colleague of ours from Chicago named Nell Minow, and man, it took me a while to get to Chicago, but if you out there and you from the Windy City, you know, a salute to you because the food, y'all food pimp hand is strong in Chicago. Wow. I didn't have anything bad. Chicago's food, Charles, was so good that I was mad thinking about coming back home because I wouldn't be able to get Italian beef and that tiramisu and those hot dogs and those burgers and that Harold's fried chicken. Oh my God, man! So I hung out with
Man, there's nothing like that good old Chicago dog with that a glowing electric relish that they put on there, the green relish that they put on there, and they put hot peppers on it if you want. I mean, man, those things are fabulous. Yeah.
Well, it's funny. I'm not going to tell you the spot I went to because they're not advertising with us. But we went to one spot where they had some Italian beef. I mean, they had some beef, Italian beef. And they gave you the option. You could either get it dipped, you can get it nice and wet, you can get it dry with a little bit of gravy. I was like, yo, they gave me a sandwich that literally was like with meat, with sauce and bread and peppers. Love Chicago, man. Chicago is what's up. Matter of fact, Charles, don't be surprised that if you start going, Tim, where you at? Man, I'm in Chicago. I flew in for a food weekend, then I'll be back on Sunday. Chicago's hot, bro.
From now on, all your connecting flights are through Chicago. You're gonna be going through there. I'm on the way to LA, but I'm stopping for Chicago.
It's pretty darn special, man. So that was fun. Now, also, Charles, you had an opportunity to see that I got an opportunity to not just interview Eddie Murphy, but Kevin Bacon, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, the Taggart and Rosewood, John Ashton, and Judge Reinhold. So that was a lot of fun. And those interviews are online right now. So if you haven't had an opportunity to check out those interviews ahead of Beverly Hills Cop, you can check them out at thefilmgordon.com. And, you know, it's our conversations. The Eddie Murphy one was pretty cool, though, man. I mean, I wanted to touch on that one because, as a rule, Charles has been around me enough that I don't really get shook when I talk to people because we talk to people all the time, man. But Eddie Murphy is somebody who is in my generation, is somebody I idolize. You know, a guy that I remember being nearly his age when he was on SNL. And I was in the military at that time, and I would come back home to New Jersey, and me and my friends would sit around, Charles, and watch SNL until it went off at 1 o'clock on Saturday nights. And then we would hop in the car and drive to New York and we would party. So Eddie Murphy, man, from Trading Places, 48 Hours, Beverly Hills Cop, The Best Defense, The Golden Child, Beverly Hills Cop 2, all Coming to America, Harlem Nights. That's my guy. I've seen everything Ed's ever done. Raw, Delirious. He's the guy. He's the guy. So what'd you think, Charles?
About the interview that you had with Eddie?
Yeah.
Well, you know, the last time you did an interview, a big interview with like that, you sat down with a gentleman and you got an incredible scoop on his next work. I was looking forward to something like that from this interview, but man, you guys had a good time. But I did, you know, get to find out that he's doing that It's a Mad World thing, and we talked about that last week. So, you know, yeah.
I think part of it and you could probably speak to this as well as somebody who does a lot of these junkets. Is there times, and I'm not saying any names, Charles. There are times when you do these junkets, you be like, man, I got 4 minutes. That's 1 minute too long. And there are times when it's like I got 4 minutes and I could have used 40. I mean,
40.
you could have gave me 10.
Yeah.
It would have been great. I mean, but
I mean, when you're sitting down with the great Eddie Murphy, I mean, how do you limit the conversation? I mean, you give him one question, he's going to run with it. So 4 minutes goes by super quick in an interview with somebody like that.
Well, I think the one thing that I wanted to accomplish, which I didn't share going in, was that I wanted to say something that would get that Eddie Murphy laugh, right? I wanted to hear that laugh at the end, right? And at the end, when I said, because he had openly been talking that he really didn't like Beverly Hills Cop 3, right? And he talked a little bit.
He wasn't the only one,
right? So I said, I love how authentic you have been, and and he looked at me. He said, y'all, he said, it's not like I'm telling y'all a secret, because y'all know when the movies ain't good. Actually, y'all know before I do. I said, touche, brother. Touche. We do, because we didn't talk about Pluto Nash. We didn't talk about 1,000 Words. We didn't talk about Mr. Church. I mean, Eddie Murphy.
Hey,
Mr. Church. I wasn't a big fan of Mr. Church.
Mr. Church was a decent film. I like that. Yeah.
I wasn't a big fan of Norbit either, but Yeah. Bowfinger, I liked. I thought he was funny in Bowfinger. Tower Heist, the one he did with oh God, what is his name? Zoolander.
Stiller, Ben Stiller.
Ben Stiller, yeah. That was, I mean, he was decent in that.
It was okay. He was okay.
But Dolomite Is My Name, his dramatic stuff. Dolomite Is My Name, as well as Dreamgirls. Should have won the Oscar for playing James early. But again, you don't get a chance in 4 minutes to have these kinds of conversations. You also don't get to talk about or salute him for the huge contribution he made to our culture through Saturday Night Live. I mean, you can argue, and people have, that it's between Eddie Murphy and John Belushi of who is the funniest person that's ever. I mean, Belushi, look, those first 4 years, Belushi was amazing on SNL. So I'm never taking anything away from him. But the fact that like the entire lineup of the Not Ready for Primetime players all left together, Garrett Morris, Dan Aykroyd, Bill Murray, Gilda Radner, Lorraine Newman, Chevy Chase, they all bounced at the same time. And then along comes this 19-year-old kid from Roosevelt, Long Island, who literally, along with Joe Piscopo, you got to give Piscopo some credit because he was actually not as funny as Murphy, but he was probably the second best cast member. But Murphy just dominated for the 4 years he was on that show, man.
And it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable that he was only on the show for 4 years. But I mean, he was pretty much in every skit during the 4 years that he was there. So
Gumby, James Brown, Hot Tub, Kill My Landlord, C-I-L-L. Look, bro, still to this day, the only person who was ever a cast member that hosted
at the same time. At the same time, yeah.
Eddie Murphy is amazing, man. So you can't tell me anything about Ed that I didn't know going in. And I was just happy for the opportunity, man, to have it documented. Like, people wanted pictures with him. I was like, no, I'm good. We have an interview. We sat down and had a conversation, albeit short. It's a conversation, man. So
not everybody can pull off that. Not everybody can pull off an interview with Eddie Murphy.
Well, it's been an interesting year, man. So it's Kevin Hart, Tyler Perry, Eddie Murphy. I got one in the chamber that's coming, though, that I put a request in for. So I'm going to find out if they can let me do this one, because I don't know if it's on that level, but it's a pretty big level.
Imagine if Spike had come to the festival.
Spike is huge. I've interviewed Spike several times, man. So Spike is not. I mean, it's funny, Charles. When you talk about having a wish list, man, we've had this conversation. I've had it. It wasn't documented, but I got 45 minutes with Sidney Poitier. I've had time to talk to Eddie Murphy. I've had time to talk to Tyler Perry. I've interviewed Oprah back in the day, Ava DuVernay. So I've gotten a chance to really interview some of my favorite people. And the ones that I didn't get a chance to interview are people we met at those Celebration of Black cinemas, whether it be Tracy Ellis Ross, Mark Wahlberg, Lupita Nyong'o. So I've had an opportunity in this game to have interacted. Have still not gotten any Denzel Washington time. That's the one. I talked to his son, but not Denzel.
Well, it'll happen eventually, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, maybe soda. So, but outside of that, man, here we are, man. 4th of July weekend, man. We talked earlier, and coming up a little later on, a movie that I think is going to, if Inside Out 2 did the numbers it did, Despicable Me 4 is going to kill it this weekend at the box office.
Inside Out 2 just crossed the $1 billion mark. $1 billion. And people were worried that this summer was going to be off. Okay.
Well, no. Well, let's be honest about something now. There have been summers in the past, Charles, and maybe 5-10 years ago, where like the money was evenly dispersed, right? So there might be a movie that would kick some butt, but you got to remember 10 years ago, we were in the superhero phase. So Marvel was just printing money, right? They were just rolling these movies out, and these movies were making $7, $8, $9, $1 billion. Matter of fact, Marvel went on a run, if you really go back and study it, where they made about 5 or 6 movies in a row that hit $1 billion. Like those movies,
billion.
they were spending 200 million to make them, but they was like, it's no big deal. We'll get 5 times the return back. So nobody sweated when the budget was 200 or 250, right? When we got to a point where budgets started moving to like 300 million, that's when it became like,
and the stock market says no.
And remember that when they did the 2-part of the end phase 3, where it was I know Endgame was the last one. What was
Infinity War?
Infinity War, and so that was a $500 million budget, but they made what, $2 billion back?
Yeah.
So that was a great wrap up. But again, Marvel has got some amazing lessons to learn. And I think you and I have talked about it ad nauseum during the pandemic, that they were flooding Disney Channel with so much content that I think they lost their way and couldn't figure out how to reconfigure it in the middle of it when you drop in all these series. So you notice now we don't get this influx of series anymore that Disney used to put out.
No, they're changing their strategy a little bit and pulling things back, refocusing, and trying to focus on story versus amount of content. So yeah, it's a good direction, because the finances couldn't sustain them doing 4 $200 million movies a year. I mean, even if you do make $1 billion back, it hurts you down the line. So too much content, too many eyes, and then the interest wanes. So they figure let's make it more of an event, and release more, at least one a year. The cool thing about this summer, though, this summer's box office is actually bigger than last summer's box office, with A Quiet Place 2 being A Quiet Place Day 1 coming out last week and hitting the $55 million mark in its opening weekend. Things are going well for this summer, though.
No, I got you, man. And I think the other thing that's interesting to me is that there's going to be a really good litmus test coming at the end of this month with Deadpool versus Wolverine. And despite the fact that it's a Marvel movie, I got a feeling this one is going to, I mean, the fact Wolverine's first appearance in the MCU, and there's a lot of anticipation for this movie, a lot. So I just think that it's going to be I can't wait to see it. I mean, I don't really look forward to a lot of movies. I really want to see this one, right? And I have to go in, Charles, and you and I have talked about this with my expectations low. Because if you go in there all hyped and it doesn't match your expectations, you're like, man, I'm disappointed in that movie, man. So I don't want to be disappointed. I just want them. I've seen the first two films in the Wolverine, excuse me, in the Deadpool saga. And I remember the last Wolverine movie, which, the standalone one that was done 8 years in the future. That was really good. Was that
Logan.
Oh
Logan,
yeah,
yeah.
Logan was fire. Logan was really good. So what I love about the Wolverine character is that we've seen Hugh Jackman play it serious. We've seen him do it with humor. So this is probably the lightest. I mean, would you agree, Charles? This has got to be the lightest version that we'll see of Wolverine. In this film with Ryan Reynolds playing with Deadpool.
Well, I mean, it's supposed to be, but we really don't know. I mean, we don't know. That's the good thing about it is they've been keeping everything really close to the vest. I mean, we know what Deadpool is, who
No, they haven't.
Deadpool is,
No, they
but
haven't.
we don't really know which Wolverine we're getting. Are we getting old grumpy madman Wolverine, or is this like a little lighthearted version of him? The last time, I mean, there was a movie that happened before that had Deadpool and Wolverine in it, but a lot of people didn't like that one version. So this is an opportunity for them to fix the errors of the past. And but like you said, I've already predicted this movie's going to be in the $150 million range for its opening weekend. So I would be surprised if it's less than 100, but I think it's going to be at least 150.
Well, I'm just a little upset because about 12 hours ago, somebody released some information about the movie, some casting information, which I'm not going to repeat. But I was like, it would have been great. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Absolutely.
It would have been great if you'd have just surprised us with that. Like, should you tell us, isn't there some times, Charles, that like it's better to just surprise me? Because I would have just been in the theater like, oh, damn, they didn't do that. And I said that yesterday when I found out, but I can't wait to see it, man. I'm really looking forward to seeing how that plays out in the midst of this story.
You really have to question why they released the information. It's not like that's going to create any more buzz for people to go to the theater. They were going to go see it anyway. So I'm like you. It would have really been much more of a surprise to sit in the theater and see it than to know it's happening and wondering when it's going to happen. When it. I mean, I don't know. So yeah, I think that might have been a small misstep on the part of the studio. They could have held that one a little closer to the vest.
Do you think the studio did it, or is it just some person? Because I don't think the studio did it. I think it was somebody got an advanced copy and felt like they wanted to get some ink by I mean, seriously, by just releasing some information they shouldn't have released.
Well, I agree that it's probably the more of the latter than the former, but in all essence, it's the former that they released the document to the person who saw it. So there is some culpability on their part. So yeah.
Tell you what I know. Wow. Yeah,
Because I mean, I'm sure after I watched my copy of Deadpool versus Wolverine, I'm not releasing any information yet.
wow. Well, I think again, this is one of those times where I think that too much information is not good. Like sometimes it's good that information is power. This time, information kind of ruined an experience that I think all of us collectively would have had, and it would have come out that weekend because people would have tweeted it. But man,
Oh yeah.
I can't. I told you earlier that before I even knew that I was really looking forward to seeing these two guys together, and now that's an added bonus. I hope there's another surprise in there. It would be cool if say another character from the first two or three phases showed up in this movie, which now anything is possible. Or
anything is possible.
watch this, or somebody else that was formerly in the in the Sony verse. They were on Sony, right? Back in the
Well,
day.
actually, this film is Sony too. I mean, it's Sony connected with Marvel, but it's a Sony property that Marvel, kind of like Spider-Man, is a Sony and Marvel connection. So, yeah, I need this new iteration of Spider-Man. But yeah, this Deadpool is Sony with Marvel, so we'll be doing it again. We'll be doing it again. We'll see. I'm sure we're going to see a lot of these Sony characters showing up in these films.
That would look. That would be cool, man. I mean, so it's always, that's why I'm saying, man, it's always great when you surprise people with characters that just pop up that you have no idea. So they ruined one that would have been great. They ruined
as long as it's not Morbius
or Venom. or what's her name? Madam Web.
Madam Web.
I mean, we've gotten Howard the Duck that showed up in some Marvel movies and some small little kind of end scenes and cameos. But so yeah, man. So we're looking forward to that film, man. What else did I wanted to talk to you about something else that I was watching. It's actually not that really important because I wanted to, over the last couple of weeks, as I have not been, I have not had an opportunity to be in the theaters. I'm filling my stuff filling my time with other movies. And, right now I'm on House of Dragon season 2. I was finishing up Hacks season 3. There was Paris. There's just so much content, man, that we have to watch now.
Have you got a chance to watch The Bear yet?
You know what, man? Honestly, I tapped out on The Bear in season 2. The Bear, let me finish. The Bear season 1, when it felt like it was new and like not a lot of people weren't on it, I was all with The Bear. When The Bear started getting popular, I don't want to say it rubbed me the wrong way, but it just became less of a go-to show. And I don't know if I'm explaining it correctly or accurately, but it just didn't feel special when everybody else started watching The Bear. When it was a show like only a few of us were on, The Bear was pretty special. Then after that, I was like,
So it wasn't yours anymore. It belonged to everybody. And so,
but see, you can say the same thing for Game of Thrones, The Sopranos, The Wire, and other shows. I don't know what it is about The Bear. It just, I don't know. It felt like it had an expiration date to me with the story. And then when they got to a certain point, I just wasn't interested in the story anymore.
Well, I don't know when you tapped out on season 2. I think season 2 trumped season 1 of The Bear by a mile. And season 3 has started, and I'm not sure I'm feeling the same way. I think it kind of falls back to the feel of season 1 for me. But I mean, I know how much you love season 1. That might be what you want. So
I love season 1. I love season 1. I'm trying to think. Justified. It's so funny. At that time, you was like, you should watch Justified, because I absolutely love those two characters that are on Justified, man. And watching them, you can do Justified DC, and I'm in there for that one. I'm like, hey man, Raymond is back. Timothy Oliphant and what's his name?
Walton Goggins. Walton
Goggins, man. Those two have a chemistry, and the writing on that show, it's just great, man. Those two are just great together. They really are, man. And it's funny because a couple of days ago, Charles, I rewatched The Hateful Eight, and the whole thing with the Lincoln letter, and like I said, man, Quentin Tarantino. I've had some challenges with some stuff that QT has done. He's a really good filmmaker, man. He has a style. That's that word you like to hear me say. Whether it's Jackie Brown, Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs. Not the biggest fan of
Django.
Bastards. Glorious Bastards is okay. Django, I couldn't stand at the beginning. You remember that? I was not a fan of Django. I mean, I've learned to appreciate it, but as a writer, the thing that Quentin does, which I think is really interesting, is that he uses he's inspired by films, and sometimes he creates films based off stuff that he likes. And it's not I mean, it's nothing different than any other great director does. I mean, Scorsese has influences that he brings to the films that he makes. Steven Spielberg is the same way. Spike Lee, when you watch Do the Right Thing with Radio Raheem with the Love and Hate, which is from Night of the Hunter, from Charles Baldwin's film. So I've learned as I've matured in this job that some of the stuff that I was mad at is just me just being petty, right? And you just got to let that stuff go and understand that that's a part of creating art, is that past art inspires new art, and then you take those inspirations and you create something new.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I agree totally.
That's all you got, Charles, after that lengthy me finding
Well, I was gonna say you probably haven't watched any of the show Fallout.
I have.
Oh, and Walton Goggins in that is pretty special as well. So, I'm a big fan of Goggins. But the other show that I'm watching that just returned is The Boys, and this is supposed to be the last season of The Boys. It takes its time, so I'm waiting to see if it's going to be worthy of my continued watching. But yeah.
Well, again, man, I hate to say it because you're gonna look at me like I'm crazy. Another show I tapped out on. I saw the first 2 seasons of The Boys, and when shows just go too hard for me, I just like, nah, I'm good. I think The Bear. Let me get back to The Bear. The last time I watched The Bear, I remember there was an episode where the family was all sitting around at the table and they were arguing. You may remember this if you remember the show. And I think after that, I was like, just not feeling it. The Shy was another show. There are tons of shows that I can name that I started, and then after a minute, I was like, yeah, I'm just not here for that. Now I can watch all of Abbott Elementary. Love that show. I'm trying to think. There have been tons of shows that I like. Jack Reacher. You put a new season of Jack Reacher together, I'm there for you.
Oh, it's coming. It's coming.
Um,
Have you had an opportunity to watch Elsbeth?
I watched the first episode because I remembered her on
The Good Fight, The Good Wife and The Good Fight. She was a character.
Right. I remembered her on that one, so I gave the first episode a little quirky. Maybe it's quirky because she's quirky, but I don't know if I like her enough without everybody else. Right? If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like if she's a part of the collective, then that works. But if she's the center, nah. Suits, I can watch Suits over and over, The Wire over and over. What was the show? Entourage over and over. I've watched all three of those shows like 2-3 times each, minimum.
Well, the thing about Elsbeth to me is that it reminds me of Columbo back in the day. I don't know if you ever watched Columbo.
I did.
Back in the day, but you already know who did it. You just get to figure out see how they figure out who done it and why. And then they have these guest stars that come on every show. You see the guest star and you're like, oh yeah, he's the one that does it because he's the guest star on the show. You got Jane Krakowski on one, Linda Lavin, who was Alice, Jesse Tyler Ferguson from Modern Family, Retta, Blair Underwood, Keegan Michael Key. So you get all these guys coming in on the show, and it kind of I think it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun.
All right, man. Well, you know what, man? I'm gonna have to. I think I'm so far behind in movie watching that it becomes really, really hard for me to take on new shows, man. But we'll give it a shot.
You gotta stop traveling so much.
Not gonna happen, sir. And neither you. I don't see Charles slowing down. See, Charles doesn't say anything about the places he goes. He tells me. But no, man, it's the summertime, man. You gotta hit the road and do some stuff, man. All right, Charles. It is movie review time, brother. All right, so we're gonna start off with Despicable Me 4, which is an animated comedy that serves as a sequel, of course, to Despicable Me 3, which was back in 2017. This is the fourth main installment, yet the sixth overall installment in the Despicable Me franchise, because there were two Minion films that were in there as well. This film was directed by Chris Renaud and co-directed by Patrick Delange in his feature directorial debut, and written by Mike White and Ken Dario. It stars the voices of Steve Carell, Kristen Wiig, Pierre Coffin, Joey King, Miranda Cosgrove, Steve Coogan, Sofia Vergara, Renaud himself, Stephen Colbert, and Will Ferrell. And this film tells the story in this one of a new member being welcomed to the family, Gru Jr., who's intent on tormenting his dad. However, their peaceful existence soon comes crashing down when criminal mastermind Maxime Lemall escapes from prison and vows revenge against Gru. Of course, this movie is distributed by Universal Pictures and is dropping on July the 3rd. Charles Kirkland, I will let you go first on this one, man. Break down and give me your analysis of Despicable Me 4.
You know, we've had discussions about movies in the past, and the last movie we saw, Inside Out 2, I said, you know, it really didn't. It's more of an adult film than it is for children.
Right.
Well, this film is actually the opposite. It's more of a children's film than an adult film. There's a lot of things in here that, you know, adults will be rolling their eyes at and saying, "Are you kidding me?" But it's funny and it's just goofy and loony. I use the word loony on purpose because there's at least one scene in the film where they blatantly borrow takes from Looney Tunes comedies. So it's just a silly, fun movie for children. There's no depth in it or anything that would draw adults into. There's nothing complicated about the story. Matter of fact, I have this ability. I watch a movie for 5 minutes and I can tell you everything that's going to happen in the film. And this one, it took me, when the title card dropped, I leaned over to my wife who was with me at the film. I said, this is going to happen, this, and this. And sure enough, beat for beat, I was right all the way to the end. It's just really a simple a story. It's fun if you're a child, but for adult, it's kind of it's not for me. It's not intelligent enough for adults. So yeah, it's okay movie. I enjoyed it. There were some things like the name of the school that they went to was Lycée Pas Bon, which means school not good. And so it's just a lot of silliness that goes on in this film.
Charles is you know, that great line from the late Joe Barber. This movie wasn't made for you, man. I on the other hand, maybe it was the fact that I hadn't seen a movie in the theaters in like 2.5 weeks, and I was just happy to be there. I had a lot of fun with this movie, man. I mean, it's supposed to be silly. You know, it's a whole room full of children that are in the room, and they loved it as well, man. You got to know going in, if you're watching a Despicable Me film, that the Minions are going to be silly. They had a group of what I guess superhero or kind of enhanced minions that were in this one that I thought were really, really funny. You know, all the voice work I thought worked really, really well. You know, of course, the super villain is always good because Gru started off as a villain and now is sort of rounded into this kind of ex-villainous family man who gets to fight other villains who are colleagues of his or people he knows. I just thought the whole thing was funny and fun. And I looked over at you. I said, it's very cute. I had a lot of fun with it. So yeah, I like this movie, man. I had fun with it. I would give it a B, solid B.
I'd give it a B as well. I'm not as negative I wasn't as negative as you're trying to make me sound. I've said the movie is fun. You're gonna have fun. You're gonna laugh.
Now we will move on to a Charles Kirkland film, which is an adult film. And this latest film is called Beverly Hills Cop Axel F. After his daughter's life is threatened, a wisecracking detective Axel Foley teams up with a new partner and some old pals to turn up the heat on a conspiracy. Beverly Hills Cop Axel F is an action comedy directed by Mark Malloy in his film debut. This is the fourth installment in the Beverly Hills Cop film franchise and the sequel from 30 years ago to Beverly Hills Cop Beverly Hills Cop 3 in 1994. Eddie Murphy also reprises his role as Foley with Judge Reinhold, John Ashton, Paul Reiser, Bronson Pinchot, reprising their roles in previous films, and adding Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Taylor Page, and Kevin Bacon in this new film. In this story, as you heard me say, of course, Axel, I mean, if you ever think about every Beverly Hills Cop film, he always starts in Detroit. He's always in Detroit, never promoted. He's been doing the same job as a detective for 40 years. Everybody around Axel gets promoted. Now, Paul Reiser is now took over for Inspector Todd. So he's now the inspector in Detroit. We later find out that that Taggart has now taken over as the chief in the Beverly Hills Police Department from Ronnie Cox's character. I can't remember what his name was in the first three. Everybody is getting promoted around Axel except Axel. Axel likes being a man of the people. He's in Detroit. He's doing Detroit stuff. And this film, Charles, is a huge homage to the original one from 1984. So much so that the opening is sort of similar. They brought back all the music that was in the first one is in this one. The cues in this film are almost identical to the cues that were in the first film. What were you going to say, Charles?
Bogomil.
Bogomil, thank you. So Bogomil is retired or not in this movie, and now Taggart is the chief of police there now. But I'd say all that to say that sometimes, and we talked earlier about when people have a certain expectation or a certain thing that they want to look forward to, I love the first Beverly Hills Cop. I really did. Now, the fact that they're doing, you know, this huge homage, and it's not saying it's the same movie. It's not like this is Hangover 1 and Hangover 2, right? But this movie is dripping in nostalgia. It's dripping in it. There's so much nostalgia that they want to show you and connect it back to the first one. It's almost like, Charles, they want us to forget about the third one. I mean, I'm not being funny. There are no references to the third one. It's like there was the first film, and then there's this film. Not to say that we like Beverly Hills Cop 2. 2 was cool, right? 3 was a disaster. The first one is golden, so we're gonna make this more in the style of 3. The style of 1. And this film, you know, with the story, Taylor Page now joins the franchise as his daughter, who is investigating a case, and she gets in over her head. Rosewood, who was formerly a detective in the first 3, has a new occupation, and he is helping Axel's daughter. And when he discovers that she's in over her head, he makes a phone call back to Detroit. Of course, you know, I don't know where. I guess on a cop salary in Detroit, he can just fly back and forth to Beverly Hills. He always has some places.
It's called frequent flyer miles.
Frequent flyer miles. He's been flying back and forth to Beverly Hills for 40 years, man. So he shows up in Beverly Hills, and of course, you know, the wisecracking Axel is back. Eddie Murphy, which is really interesting, with one of the observations that I picked up, Charles, is that 40 years ago when he made this first film, you know, he was a comedian on the rise. He was wisecracking. He was sort of finding his way, you know, kind of riffing and doing his thing and figuring it out. 40 years later, Eddie Murphy is Eddie Murphy, man. He's the king. So Eddie Murphy is very comfortable as Axel Foley in this story, to the point where he's just like, hey, man, you know, I'm Axel, man. I'm going to do some crazy stuff. And the crazy stuff works, man, because it's Eddie Murphy and he makes it work, man. You know, bringing back Taggart and Rosewood, Bronson Pinchot, working with Kevin Bacon, which ironically, I talked a little bit about that to Kevin Bacon, that his first breakthrough role was 40 years ago. At the same time, Eddie was doing his when he had Footloose that was out. So the fact that we put a little Footloose in the movie, we bring some Dark Knight in there with Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I mean, so you got a whole lot of stuff happening. Now, he's also the guy who partners with Axel to help investigate this case. And of course, they don't see eye to eye. He thinks that Axel is old school, which he is. So there's a lot of stuff going on. But ultimately, I think this movie really is a good comparison to Bad Boys 4. So both of them produced by Jerry Bruckheimer, both of them featuring characters that people are very, very familiar with. Both of these action comedies, of course, Beverly Hills Cop kind of created the action comedy, because if you think before this film, what was an action comedy, Charles?
I don't know.
No, this is it. This is the creation of a genre where you took a comedian, put him in there, and it's been copied so many times, whether it's Rush Hour, Blue Street, everybody's wanted to do an action comedy. Eddie Murphy, I mean, Lethal Weapon, everybody. This is the first one that really kicked it off. So, like I said, man, this to me feels like a much stronger effort than the reboot or the sequel of Coming to America, which I thought was a disaster. I thought Eddie was really, really great, and Dolomite Is My Name. So this really kind of reboots and puts the Beverly Hills Cop franchise back on some solid footing. And along with the fact that it's on Netflix and that it's not going to be in theaters, I think is really going to explode for Netflix this week. As we're talking about Despicable Me, you ain't even got to go out the house to watch Beverly Hills Cop. It'll show up on Netflix on your account. It will easily be the #1 streaming film of on the planet this week on Netflix. And I think they can get 50 or 60 million eyes on this thing this weekend, Charles.
You know, not only do they are they dropping it into your account tomorrow, well, you know, on the 3rd, but they have coming soon. I mean, if even if you go onto your Netflix account, it's going to say coming soon, Beverly Hills Cop, Axel F, and they're going to show you some trailers and make sure you know that this film is coming. I really think, you know, it's really cool. I don't actually like the film. It could have been a theatrical release,
Absolutely.
and I think it probably would have done well as a theatrical release, but we're just blessed if you have a Netflix account to have this film come to you, and you can sit down with your family and be wrapped up in the nostalgia. I think you were talking about people coming back. Paul and trying to disavow some of the other films. Paul Reiser's character came to us in Beverly Hills Cop 2, so it was really good to see him come back, and because he wasn't in 3, and then to come back in 4, and to be Axel's boss now, which was really cool because Axel almost got him fired in the second film. So yeah, there's a lot of things in here that's really good. It's really good to see Eddie Murphy be Axel Foley, because I was worried, you know, at this stage of his life, can he still be Axel Foley? And the answer is yes. When you see him in this film, he's a mellower, older Axel Foley, but he's still he's still the same Axel, doing the same crazy stuff and tearing up cities and conning his way through life. It's really good. It's really good.
So let me give you two interesting facts about this, right? I already told you that Eddie Murphy hated Beverly Hills Cop 3. His motivation, Charles, initially for making this fourth installment is because he did not want to leave people hanging on how horrible 3 was, right? So we got to make a fourth film. And here's one for you that I don't think you knew. The 2 guys that directed Bad Boys 4, Abdel El Arbi and Bilal Fallah, were initially supposed to direct this movie, but they took Bruckheimer took them and put them on the other movie and put Mark Malloy on this one. So that would have really been interesting to figure out from an action standpoint, because the action in Bad Boys 4 is it's tremendous in that film. I wonder if that would have been something that could have worked in this film. I don't know. I think the action is pretty good, but they lean more into the comedy than to the action. So yeah, so that was
Brett Ratner, who did the Rush Hour films, was also at one time attached as the director for this film. But again, the production company passed on him. I think he did, well with Rush Hours. He could have done this film as well. So it's just crazy, all the things that could happen. But we got a great movie, and from what I'm hearing, maybe we'll get a Coming to America 3 so we can forget about how bad 2 was.
Well, I tell you what, they've already announced that 5 is coming. Beverly Hills Cop 5.
Yeah.
They're already in development on 5. So I think Eddie is, it felt like he was rejuvenated. And I think Netflix will not have an issue after this weekend of throwing some more money at Eddie Murphy Productions behind this movie. But yeah, I think that's a really good point about Coming to America. Coming to America, honestly, and you and I talked about this on the show and with our colleagues, I think you should have just left well enough alone, right? Like, people were begging for a sequel. You just were never gonna get what you wanted, man, because they caught lightning in a bottle. With that back in 1988, there was no reason, Charles, to make a Coming to America sequel. There's just no reason other than nostalgia. And I think you had to wait for the right story and the right set of actors in order to pull it off. But the first one is so dominated by Murphy and Arsenio Hall, and it's sort of everything around it. But it was hard, man. I mean, I would have advised Eddie Murphy if I would have been in the room, don't even do it, man. Like, do you need to see Boomerang 2? No, you don't need to see Boomerang 2.
No.
You don't, man. No. Vampire in Brooklyn 2. Do you need that?
No, not at all.
But I'm being funny. You really didn't need a Coming to America, a sequel to that movie. That movie was iconic on its own, and then you ruined it by putting something else in front of our eyes now, and it's like, give me that one. Like, give me the first one.
Eddie, let's not have that be the last thing we think of Coming to America. Let's fix that.
I don't know how you fix it, man. I mean, he's in Samunda. When we last saw him, his father, James Earl Jones, is passed in the film, and he's running Zamunda. I mean, there is a way to clean it up if you come up with a story that's better. I would just hope that if they wanted to do another Coming to America, that you don't wait until like 2030 to make the movie. If you can come up with something in the next 3 to 4 years, that would be something plausible of him dealing with, his kingdom, because Coming to America was always a comedy, right? So I don't know the dramatic efforts. It's got to be funny. And and I'm sure there are some talented people that are out there that can come up with a screenplay, Charles. But, at this point, man, I don't know if you can fix that turd. I just don't know. I don't know if you can clean that one up. I mean, they were able, it took 30 years to get another Beverly Hills Cop movie. 30 years, bruh.
Yeah.
Remember, they made the first 3 in 10 years, and the 4th installment was 30 years later. It was almost like Top Gun Maverick. I mean, Bruckheimer again, man. I give him credit. The first Top Gun.
Ho. I think the problem was Beverly Hills Cop 3 stunk so badly that they were like, nobody wanted to touch it with a 10-foot pole. And so now that the smell is kind of gone after 30 years, they can go back to it. So hopefully with this one they can get back into it. So I think we should wrap with that.
No, but I was gonna say we got a couple more minutes left. I was gonna say that the thing that's interesting to me is that I remember, and Beetlejuice is in a similar place. Beetlejuice was 35 years ago, something like that, or maybe 40 years ago. Was the first Beetlejuice in 84, or is that 87? Can you look that up?
Yeah, I
don't
can
know
look it
when the
up.
first Beetlejuice was, but I was gonna say, as you're looking for Beetlejuice, talking about Top Gun Maverick, I remembered seeing the first Top Gun, and it was just the iconic piece of art that they produced back in 1986. And I was really skeptical. And then I saw Maverick, and I was like, that's how you book into movies. That is probably the best example of what Coming to America 2 didn't do. It didn't do that.
Well, Tim Burton did Beetlejuice in 88.
88. Okay, so now here we are 35 years later. And again, he's got the same challenge, man. How do you want to be Top Gun and book into films you don't want to be Coming to America? you have a great first film, and the second one is like, ugh. I mean, so it's hard, Charles. It's hard.
Yeah, it is.
So having said that, man, I think we're gonna wrap right here, man. To your point, both Despicable Me 4 and the fourth installment of Beverly Hills Cop, Axel F. As I said, man, I think the first 5-10 minutes, man, that anybody watches this new movie, you have a smile on your face because you're like, man, I know where this is going. So, oh, they changed it. Oh, but there's that music again. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. Hey, man, that's what you want to see when you watch a Beverly Hills Cop movie.
What's your grade?
Having fun.
What's your grade?
My grade on Beverly Hills Cop, I give it a B minus. And I'm gonna give it a B minus for reasons that you know about that I can't reveal to the public because I just need to watch it again. My grade might be higher if I watch it again. Because the first time I was entertained by it and I thought Ed was great. I'm just gonna keep it real with the people, man. Charles, should I just keep it real and tell them?
I mean, you can, but I mean, hey, sure, go ahead. It's your show.
Man, we jumped on a plane at 4 o'clock in the morning. They showed this movie at 9 o'clock at night, LA time. It was late. A bunch of us was sitting there going, so I need to see it again because I want to watch it when I'm fresh. And unfortunately, we can probably revisit this in a week because the numbers will be out and we'll probably have a lot to talk about with it. But yeah, I gave it a B minus. I would probably raise it to a B because I'm just being a little harsh. If I was really locked in, it's probably a B plus. But B minus is where I'm gonna start at with this film because I need to watch it again with fresh eyes. But thanks, Charles. And you didn't finish, right?
I haven't finished it, so
right,
yeah.
yes.
But I'm on B level as well.
All right. So I want you guys to have a wonderful, happy,
4th of July.
I don't call it 4th of July. It's another story. I want you to have a wonderful July the 4th, and I'll explain later. Enjoy yourself. On behalf of Charles Kirkland Jr., I'm Tim Gordon, and we will see you guys in studio next week. We're going to be back, baby. But until then, you guys take care and enjoy your weekend. Peace, Charles.
Peace.